Hey friends, today's story is unlike anything you've ever heard. It's the journey of a young migrant worker who left his small hometown hoping to support his struggling family. But what he found overseas changed his life forever. A forbidden love with a wealthy Arab woman. A child born in secrecy. A society that would rather bury the truth than face disgrace. And a father who risked everything, even his life, to protect his son. This is not just a love story. It's about sacrifice, honor, cultural clash, and the unbreakable bond between a father and child. Get ready for a tale filled with danger, heartbreak, and powerful emotions. If this story moves you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with more real-life stories that touch the soul. This is the story of a father who stood against the world, for the child he wasn't supposed to have. I was born as Michael Reyes, a 23-year-old from a quiet rural town called Millville in southern Missouri. Life was tough. My family lived paycheck to paycheck, and there were days when dinner meant just bread and butter. After my dad got laid off from the steel plant, I knew I had to do something. So I made the biggest decision of my life. I signed up for a legal overseas work program and ended up as a domestic worker in the Middle East. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. The day I arrived in Riyadh, everything felt surreal. The city gleamed under the desert sun. My employer, Ms. Nadia Al-Saba, a 34-year-old wealthy Arab woman with Lebanese roots, lived in a luxurious mansion left to her by her late father. Everyone in the neighborhood called her Miss Velvet, curvy, sharp-tongued, and always smelled like expensive French perfume. Nadia wasn't married, had no kids, and lived alone in that palace-like house. My job was simple: clean the house, do grocery runs, take care of the garden. At first, it was just a job like any other. That was until she started calling me by strange little pet names like my Missouri boy. Sometimes when I was mopping the floor, I'd catch her watching me, standing way too close. One day, she gave me a new uniform, tighter than anything I'd worn before. I didn't ask questions. I just wore it. Then one night, something changed. I was watering plants when she called down from her balcony in that soft, breathy voice. "Michael, can you help me with something in my room? The AC is broken." I stepped into her room. The lights were dim. The room smelled like lavender and something musky. She wore a golden satin robe. My heart pounded like a war drum. "You know," she whispered, stepping closer, "this house is too big. I'm always alone. But you're different. You're kind. I like you." Her eyes locked on mine. I looked away. But then she touched my hand. Whatever lines there were between us, employer and worker, foreigner and citizen, disappeared. That night, something happened that should never have happened. Something I couldn't undo. Weeks passed. Nadia changed. She treated me less like an employee and more like something else. But not a partner either. I became her shadow. Every morning I brushed her hair. I fed her breakfast. I massaged her feet at night. I even had to sleep on the couch in her room. On some nights, she pulled me into her bed again. I started to feel trapped. Then I noticed her body changing. Her cheeks paled, but her belly began to swell. "Michael," she said one morning, her voice trembling, "do you know what this is?" She placed my hand on her stomach. "This is your baby." The world stopped spinning. I was just a kid from Missouri with no future. She was a rich Arab aristocrat. And now she was carrying my child. If her family or the authorities found out, it could mean prison. Or worse. In that country, out-of-wedlock pregnancy is more than scandal, it's a crime. But Nadia looked happy. She started buying baby clothes, booked private doctors, even hired a midwife from Lebanon in secret. Then came the scariest part. "We need to move to a villa outside the city," she ordered one evening. "No one else must know I'm pregnant." We relocated to a secluded villa far from Riyadh. It felt less like a home and more like a prison. Whispers began to float. A cousin saw a sonogram on the dining table. A taxi driver who used to drive us started talking. People got suspicious. And Nadia, she was getting worse. Swollen feet. Shortness of breath. The doctor, a quiet man named Dr. Salim Key, gave a grim warning. If she delivers naturally, she could be paralyzed. Or die. I didn't know what to do. I was barely an adult myself. And just then, I got a WhatsApp call from the Indonesian consulate. Michael, said a voice through static. We received a report. A foreign worker seen with a pregnant employer. If the Saudi authorities get wind of this, it could become an international incident. You need to be careful. I couldn't speak. I was stuck between love, fear, and duty. I knew one thing though, I couldn't leave her. Not now. 3 days after the consulate's warning, I spotted a black SUV parked near the villa. 2 men in dark robes sat inside, taking photos with a long lens. One of them whispered into a walkie-talkie. Nadia saw them from the window. Her face turned pale. They're from my family, she said quietly. They've been sent to watch us. If they find out you're the father, you won't just be arrested. You'll be hunted. My family doesn't forgive disgrace. I realized then, this wasn't just a messy affair. This was a war. A war between blood, pride, and survival. That night, everything changed. Nadia went into labor. Violent contractions. Her screams echoed through the villa. Dr. Salim rushed over. He looked at me, dead serious. We have to do a C-section. Tonight. Here. No hospital, no equipment. High risk. I held Nadia's hand as he operated on a fold-out table in the living room. Sweat poured from her face. Her grip was weak but didn't let go. Whatever happens, I whispered, you have to live, for him. At exactly midnight, a baby's cry pierced the desert silence. A boy. Half American, half Arab. He was perfect. But Nadia couldn't move her legs. I can't feel them, she whispered in a broken voice. Dr. Salim's face was grave. There were complications. Spinal nerves were damaged. She may never walk again. But we didn't have time to grieve. Outside, patrol cars were circling. I heard the faint sound of tires on gravel. My heart froze. They know, I said. Nadia's eyes welled up. Take our son. Hide. If they find you, they'll kill you. I held her close. I'm not leaving without you. Dr. Salim pulled me away. If you die, this boy becomes an orphan. He'll have no rights. No name. No future. You must disappear. Tears burning my face, I grabbed our newborn, still unnamed, wrapped him in a towel, and fled into the desert. I drove a rented car through the darkness, away from the villa, toward the port city of Jeddah. There, a sympathetic contact from the Indonesian consulate hid me in a cramped apartment. Weeks passed. I was a fugitive. Nadia, I heard, was in a private facility, hidden away. Rumors spread through local media. Princess Nadia Al-Sabah, mysteriously paralyzed after secret pregnancy. No father mentioned. No child acknowledged. My son didn't legally exist. No birth certificate. No nationality. He was invisible. A senior official from the consulate finally offered me a hard choice. If you apply for repatriation, we can bring you and the child back to your country. But you'll carry this burden forever. I looked into my son's eyes, wide, innocent, unaware of the storm he was born into. I named him Fari Ian Noor, the light born from the darkest night. But what I didn't know was, Nadia's family was planning something. And they weren't going to let us go that easily. 3 weeks after I escaped the villa, Fari and I were still living like shadows, moving from one safe house to another across Jeddah. The consulate had hidden us in a tiny rented flat guarded by 2 plainclothes officers. They were preparing our evacuation papers, but it was slow. Too slow. Pressure was mounting from unknown sources. Someone powerful wanted me to stay trapped. One night, there was a knock on the door. I tensed, clutching Fari close. But when I opened it, I saw a familiar face. Dr. Salim. I had to come, he said. I left Riyadh. Nadia, she cries all day. She can't speak much. She can't move. She just wants to see her child again. His eyes were filled with what looked like genuine sorrow. I let him in. I must have been stupid. Tired. Too trusting. Because that night, after feeding Fari and falling asleep beside him, I woke up to an empty crib. Fari was gone. Dr. Salim had vanished too. Panic exploded in my chest. I tore through the apartment screaming. The guards burst in. We turned the entire place upside down. But nothing. Then the next afternoon, a consulate officer handed me a flash drive. This footage was pulled from a hidden camera across the street. I watched in horror. Dr. Salim, holding Fari, stepped into a black car. The license plate traced toward the southern border. Toward Yemen? That's when the truth came crashing down. Nadia's family was trying to erase their shame. Not through violence. No. Through silence. They didn't want the baby dead. Just gone. Erased. No records. No name. No trace. Raised in exile as a servant. Or left to rot in some forgotten village. I felt my heart shatter. With the help of 2 consulate officers, I followed the trail into the border zone. Along the way, I got another devastating call. Nadia slipped into a coma, the nurse said. Post-surgery infection. She might not wake up. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I had nothing left to lose. The consulate wouldn't cross the border. Too risky. Too political. But I would. I borrowed a fake ID, posed as a cargo truck driver, and slipped into an illegal migrant camp near the Yemeni line. Dust. Heat. Desperation. And there, through the slits of a dirty tent guarded by 2 armed men, I saw him. Fari. Alone. Crying. I stepped forward. A cold, metallic click behind my ear stopped me. Don't move, Missouri, came a voice in thick Arabic accented English. You think you can just take him back? And I realized I might not make it out alive. The barrel of the gun pressed hard against the back of my neck. My heart pounded like it might explode. You think a bastard child can carry noble blood? The man hissed behind me. We won't kill you. We'll erase you. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on Fari, still crying inside the tent, his tiny fists reaching into the air for someone who wasn't there. Then, a single gunshot rang out. The man behind me dropped. Chaos erupted. Bullets flew through the night as soldiers in desert camouflage stormed the camp. They came from nowhere, surrounding us in a flash. Someone had tipped them off. I dropped to the sand, crawling toward the tent yelling, Fari! 2 guards tried to block me, but the Saudi border patrol, led by a consulate security agent, fired warning shots into the air. The guards ran. I burst into the tent and scooped Fari into my arms. He was warm, shaking, but alive. Alive. The officer who'd rescued us was someone I barely knew, a local intelligence agent who'd been tracking Salim's phone. You really thought we weren't watching? He said quietly. We may not approve of what you did, but a child doesn't deserve this. They escorted us back across the border, back into Saudi land. I held Fari the entire way, whispering into his hair, promising he'd never be alone again. Then came the part one feared most. They brought me to the hospital. To Nadia. She was pale, frail, barely breathing. Tubes ran from her arms. Her mouth was dry. She only speaks once or twice a day, the nurse warned. I walked into her room. She looked like a ghost of the fierce woman I once knew. But when she saw me, and saw the baby in my arms, her lips trembled. You came, she whispered. Bring him. I gently placed Fari onto her chest. Her fingers, weak and shaking, touched his cheek. Then, for the first time in weeks, she smiled. We wept. All 3 of us. In silence. But the moment was short-lived. The next morning, the Al-Sabah family made their decision. They released an official statement. The child born of Nadia al-Sabah will not be recognized as a member of the royal line. But we will not harm him. Full custody is granted to the foreign father. Nadia al-Sabah is hereby stripped of all social and family status due to her permanent medical condition. She will be relocated discreetly to prevent scandal. Just like that, she was disowned. Thrown away. Not for the child, but for daring to love beneath her rank. A month later, I stood at the King Abdulaziz International Airport, holding Fari close to my chest, a travel document clutched tightly in my hand. By my side, in a wheelchair, sat Nadia. Her face was thin, her eyes swollen from tears. She was wrapped in a soft shawl, her legs unmoving, her voice barely a whisper. 2 agents from the consulate stood nearby, watching quietly. This was goodbye. "I'm sorry, Michael," she said, struggling to lift her head. "I was selfish. I dragged you into a storm. But you gave me something I never had." "What?" I asked softly. "Real love," she whispered. "And a reason to live." I knelt beside her, kissed her forehead, and placed Fari in her arms one last time. She cradled him, breathing in his scent, memorizing his warmth. Then, with trembling hands, she returned him to me. "Promise me," she said, "you'll raise him proud. Don't let him be ashamed of being the son of a domestic worker. Don't let them erase who he is." "I promise," I said. My throat burned. My heart cracked wide open. She nodded. "Then go." And so we boarded the flight. As the plane lifted off the runway, I looked down at the city that had broken me, and made me a father. Back in Missouri, the return wasn't easy. The town whispered. Some people pointed, some judged. But others embraced me. Called me brave. I opened a small diner using support money from the consulate and help from a few local sponsors. A modest life. Honest. Peaceful. I raised Fari with everything I had. He grew strong, curious, full of questions. I told him the truth, piece by piece. I taught him Arabic and English. I showed him pictures of his mother, letters she sent from exile. I gave him 3 names. Fari Ian Noor, the light born in darkness, given by his mother. Ahmad Michael Reyes, the blood of his father, the boy who once swept floors in a palace. And one name not written on any document, a name only he and I would ever know. The child of love that defied borders, laws, and honor. Because some stories aren't about happy endings. They're about surviving when the world says you shouldn't. Years passed. Fari grew into a boy with sharp eyes and a quiet strength, like Nadia. He was different from other kids in Millville. He moved with calm purpose, always observing, always listening. And though he was raised far from the land of his birth, the desert still echoed in his blood. Every year on his birthday, I lit a candle in silence and whispered a prayer for the woman who gave him life and lost everything. Nadia and I exchanged letters, never frequent, never predictable. She was relocated to a rehabilitation center in Istanbul, under a different name, out of the public eye. Her health remained fragile. Some days she could speak. Others she couldn't lift her head. But she always asked about Fari. One year, on his 7th birthday, a letter came with trembling handwriting. "Tell him I love him. Tell him he was never a mistake. He was my greatest act of courage." Fari read the letter himself. Quiet. Thoughtful. Then he folded it neatly and placed it in the wooden box where he kept her other notes. That night he asked, "Dad, will I ever meet her?" I didn't lie. Maybe one day. But love doesn't always mean being together. Sometimes, love means protecting from afar. He nodded. And that was enough. As for me, I never remarried. I never needed to. My life had been too full of storms, and one love had already changed me forever. Sometimes at night, when the Missouri sky was clear and stars hung heavy above our little diner home, I would look at Fari sleeping and wonder, what kind of man will he become? Will he forgive the world for how it treated him? And will he carry the fire of 2 broken people who loved him more than they loved themselves? I don't know. But I do know this: his story began in shadows. In fear. In exile. But it will not end that way. Because Fari Ian Noor, born of scandal, born of risk, is not a secret. He is my son. He is the child of a woman who defied her bloodline. And of a man who chose to stay when he had every reason to run. And someday, when he's ready, I'll tell him everything, the whole story. Because every boy deserves to know the kind of love that brought him into this world.